Can I be ambitious without burning out? Can I want something badly without destroying myself in the process? And that brings us to the main topic, which is the fear of burning out. Welcome to A Year Without Fear, the podcast where we stop letting fear make our decisions and start building the creative lives we actually want. I'm your host, Bethany Morris, and over the next year, I'm going to take you along with me as I write a novel, attempt to turn content creation into my full-time career, and confront my deepest, darkest fears. Welcome back to A Year Without Fear. I'm your host, Bethany Morris, and today we're exploring the fear of burnout. In this episode, we're going to be covering the paradox of fearing the thing that you want the most, how burnout rewires your relationship with ambition, living with chronic illnesses while trying to build something, and the difference between resistance and being out of alignment. But first, we're going to do a quick writing update. So, where I am, I'm currently about 5,200 words into the novel, and I just finished writing the inciting incident, which is super excited. I'm still feeling very motivated, and the words are flowing relatively easily. But the problem that I've been noticing is that I've started working on the novel on days I'm not supposed to, on days that I have scheduled for rest or for other projects. And at first, I told myself it was just enthusiasm, but I recognize this pattern. This is how it starts. This is self sabotage disguised as productivity. Part of it is that I don't know when I'm going to feel good again. I have fibromyalgia and bipolar 2 disorder. So when I wake up and have energy, when my brain feels clear, when my body doesn't hurt, I panic and I think I have to use this time. I have to get everything done right now because tomorrow might be a bad day. So I push hard, and that pushing is exactly what caused me to crash in the first place. So the novel is becoming sort of a test case for this fear. Can I be ambitious without burning out? Can I want something badly without destroying myself in the process? And that brings us to the main topic, which is the fear of burning out. So I think what I want to start with is kind of the core paradox, which is that I feel scared of my own ambition because I am scared that I don't know when to quit. And I know what happens when I don't know when to quit because I've lived it. Uh, and for those of you who didn't catch episode 1, here is the shortened version. I recently had to take an extended leave from work because I hit a wall. I was not just exhausted, I was depleted. My body gave out, my mental health collapsed. I was doing everything right according to external measures, but internally I was really suffering. And what terrifies me is that I didn't see it coming. I thought I was just being ambitious. I thought I was just working hard, but my body was screaming at me to stop and I couldn't hear it, or I heard it and ignored it because stopping felt like failure. So now, as I am launching this podcast, writing a novel, and trying to build a completely new life, every time I feel excited, there's this voice underneath that says, you're doing it again. You're going to burn out. You can't be trusted with your own ambition. And if I can't trust myself to be ambitious, how do I change my life? How do I build anything? The fear of burnout has become its own kind of paralysis. But before we continue, I want to give a definition of burnout. So, burnout isn't just simple exhaustion that you can sleep off over a long weekend. It involves being overburdened by internalized expectations, whether those are self imposed or external. And I would say it's usually a combination of both. Dr. Gabor Maté, a Canadian physician, has research that shows that emotion and psychological stress play a powerful role in chronic illness. In his book, When the Body Says No, he found that people with chronic conditions share a common thread. They've led lives of excessive stress, often invisible to themselves, and critically, they never learned to say no. And he observed these patterns in patients with multiple sclerosis, chronic fatigue syndrome, autoimmune disorders, fibromyalgia, and several other conditions. And the underlying emotional repression was an ever present factor. So he says The salient stressors in the lives of most human beings today, at least in the industrialized world, are emotional. Just like laboratory animals are unable to escape, people find themselves trapped in lifestyles and emotional patterns inimical to their health. The higher the level of economic development, it seems, the more anesthetized we have become to our emotional realities. We no longer sense what is happening in our bodies and cannot therefore act in self preserving ways. The physiology of stress eats away at our bodies not because it has outlived its usefulness, but because we may no longer have the competence to recognize its signals. Similarly, in the book Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle, Emily and Amelia Nagoski say, most of us have spent our whole lives being taught to believe everyone else's opinion about our bodies rather than to believe what our own bodies are trying to tell us. For some of us, it's been so long since we listened to our bodies, we hardly know how to start understanding what they're trying to tell us, much less how to trust and believe what they're saying. To make matters worse, the more exhausted we are, the noisier the signal is and the harder it is to hear the message. So, personally, I have found in my life with the help of a lot of therapy that I am a chronic people pleaser. And as such, it's really hard for me to say no to things, even when I'm already at the end of my rope. That's kind of why at the beginning of this year, even though I said I wanted rest and it was all over my vision board, that I still piled on several extracurricular activities on top of working full time during the busiest season of the year. And as previously discussed, this led me to not just burning out, but to hitting rock bottom with my physical and mental health. That being said, there are ways to manage burnout. Burnout, the secret to unlocking the stress cycle, explains that the key to recovering from burnout is to help your body complete the stress response cycle by releasing adrenaline and cortisol. And you can do this in a few ways. You can do physical activity, even if it's just for 10 minutes. You can practice breathing exercises like box breathing. You can have positive social interactions, whether that's a text, a voice memo, or an actual conversation. You can laugh by watching something funny. You can show someone or something affection, whether that's hugging someone or petting your cat. And then you can release your emotions. And the final thing is that you can use creative expression to complete that cycle. It is not about the hours you work or how many projects you have. It's about whether or not you're completing the stress cycle or storing it in your body. And I speak from experience when I say that when you have a chronic illness, your margin for error is so much smaller. I personally cannot handle stress nearly as well as I used to. It's like each period of stress that I go through, I'm unable to fully recover, which leads me to starting at a lower baseline when I go through the next stressful period of my life, which causes everything to kind of compound. So I wanted to talk about this fear of not knowing when to stop, along with some other fears I have related to burnout. So, number one is the fear of not knowing when to stop. I know that, and I'm sure you all know that sometimes you have to go hard. Launching this podcast required going hard. Writing a novel will require a lot of sustained effort over a long period of time. Launching several businesses required me to go hard. But when I find myself thinking, where's the line? When does committed become compulsive? It's so hard to kind of deprogram ourselves from a hustle mentality, especially as entrepreneurs, when a lot of the advice you hear says that you have to give 110%, 110%, especially at the beginning of a new venture, or else you're failing. And I think we've slowly started to come away from that mentality, especially after the pandemic. But as kind of evidenced in my own journey of hitting rock bottom and trying to get back up, we still have a long ways to go. The second fear related to burnout is the fear of wasting good days, which we touched on a little bit earlier. With chronic illness, you can't predict when you feel good. So when I wake up with clarity, with no pain, I find myself wanting to squeeze out every minute of it, but I know that that's a trap. And that's how I burn through reserves that I don't actually have. This past year, I've been able to become more gentle with myself and take into consideration my physical and mental needs on a daily basis. But even then, I find myself having to battle with myself and tell myself that it is okay to rest. It's okay to recharge. And that brings me to the next fear, which is the fear of regression, or excuse me, the fear that rest is regression. There's this voice in my head that says, if you rest, you'll lose momentum. If you slow down, you'll never start again. If you're not constantly pushing, you're giving up. And I don't know how to shut that voice up yet. In Burnout, the secrets to unlocking the stress cycle, it says rest is quite simply when you stop using a part of you that's used up, worn out, damaged, or inflamed, so it has the chance to renew itself. I personally like to think of the idea of rest as renewal. It's similar to rotating crops each season. You can't keep using the same soil for the same crop over and over without giving it the proper nutrients from other crops. I've started to see my life in seasons rather than a linear journey. And I know that there will be seasons that I need to rest and seasons where I need to work hard. But I also know that it's important to allow each of these seasons to play out fully so I can replenish my nutrients. And the final fear that is related to the fear of burnout is number 4, the fear of being seen as weak. Even though I have chronic illnesses, I remember thinking when I was first diagnosed that I wouldn't let them change my life at all. And this has definitely been to my detriment. While I think it's admirable to work through your chronic illnesses to achieve your goals, I think that doing that at all costs, especially when the cost is your health, is simply not worth it. It is not weakness to care for yourself. It is not weakness to take breaks. It is not weakness to go at a slower pace than you'd like, which brings me to the next section, which are some practical tips you can implement in your own life to manage burnout. So, the first tip is to pull the car over if you're feeling overwhelmed. So, what that means is that there's a difference between resistance and being out of alignment. Resistance feels like I want to do this, but I know I should. And it's usually fear based avoidance, where out of alignment feels like something is fundamentally wrong here and your body or intuition is saying stop. So when you feel overwhelmed, literally stop, pull the car over, don't push through. And ask, is this resistance I need to work through, or is it my body telling me that I'm way off track and I need to rethink the way that I'm going about this project? And this works because we adapt to chronic stress over time to the point that we aren't aware of it. People who internalize stress become so accustomed to their patterns that they don't realize that they're experiencing stress. So, pausing even for just a few minutes to realign every day forces awareness of our physicality that we might not otherwise notice. In college, I took a class called Religion and the Senses, and one of the activities we had to do was go a week without having any distractions as we walked to class. So, no music, no podcast, no external stimuli. And this forced me to confront the fact that I was using music to drown out the physical pain that I was in and push through on a daily basis. So when we slow down and listen to our bodies, we can make adjustments to better serve them in the long term. The second tip I have is to limit days for specific projects. So don't work on everything every day. My personal schedule is that I work on the podcast Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I work on novel writing Tuesday and Thursday. And then I rest or attempt to rest on Saturday and Sunday. And on bad days, with my chronic illnesses, I give myself permission to do nothing, even if it is a work day. But on good days, I stick to the assigned project, which prevents the kind of like, I need to squeeze everything in at once panic. And I think this works because it creates a boundary when you can't trust yourself to stop. The structure is deciding for you. So on Tuesdays, even if I want to work on the podcast, I don't because that's not a podcast day. So, the third tip is to track your burnout warning signs. And what you want to track is physical, so sleep quality, pain levels, energy crashes, mental, brain fog, difficulty concentrating, racing thoughts, emotional, irritability, anxiety, numbness, and finally behavioral, which is like skipping meals, isolating, abandoning self care. So, weekly, you should check in with yourself and kind of rate the categories 1 through 10. And when multiple categories drop below 5, that is a warning sign that you may be close to or experiencing burnout. And this works because the root cause of creative burnout includes overwork, lack of rest, perfectionism, and physical and mental exhaustion. So, recognizing these early is essential for addressing burnout before it escalates. The fourth tip is to reframe ambition as sustainable and not heroic. So the old story is kind of that real creators, real entrepreneurs sacrifice everything, and that you need to suffer for your art and that you have to hustle until you make it. The new story is I'm building something that is going to stand the test of time, that is going to require sustainability and not heroics. So before starting any new project or commitment, ask, can I do this for the length of time it's going to take to complete the project without breaking? And if the answer is no, you need to redesign it so it's more sustainable, even if that means it's going to take longer. At the end of the day, you're going to be more productive when you allow yourself to rest instead of fighting through burnout. And not only that, your work will be better. So this works because business and creative work need to support your life, not the other way around. Systems should be capacity first, especially when it comes to navigating chronic illnesses. And the fifth tip is called the good enough practice. And what it means is that you need to set a baseline for done that isn't perfection. I personally aim for a B plus. So for the podcast, I film, do basic editing, and post, even though it's not perfect. I get it up on the internet and keep it moving. For the novel on Tuesdays and Thursdays, my goal is to write 500 words on the page. And those words don't have to be brilliant. It doesn't have to be the next great American novel. It just has to be a completed writing day. And this matters because perfectionism is a root cause of creative burnout. It creates uninspiring tasks that drain rather than kind of energize. When as creatives, we need to be focusing on the output because you can only improve when you iterate. You can always improve something later, but finishing sustainably matters more than perfection. Okay, that brings us to the homework for the week. So, for the homework, I have a couple options. So, pick the one that feels the most doable to you. So, this week, I want you to create your personal burnout early warning tracker. You can use a simple notes app, a spreadsheet, pen and paper, whatever works for you. And then I want you to track 4 categories daily, rating each 1 to 10. So physical, mental, emotional, and behavioral, which we talked about earlier. And then at the end of the week, I want you to look at your numbers. And if you see that multiple categories are dropping below 5, that is your red flag. That's your sign to pull the car over and reevaluate more sustainable ways to continue working. The second homework you can choose to do is to practice finishing something at good enough instead of perfect. So I want you to pick one project, and before you start, define what done looks like and make it less than perfect. And when you hit good enough, when you hit B plus, I want you to stop. Don't improve it, don't tweak it, move on and share what you practiced this with and how it felt to stop early. And then the third option to write down or record in some way is your burnout story. So you can answer these prompts. What led to my burnout or near burnout? What were the warning signs I ignored? What beliefs was I operating from? What do I need to unlearn? Now, you don't have to share these publicly. This is just for you. But if you want to share a piece of that in the comments or with a trusted person, that's super powerful as well. Sometimes naming the pattern that you're going through is the first step to actually changing it. Okay, so today we talked about the fear of burnout, specifically the fear of our own ambition when we know what it's cost us before. We explored how burnout isn't just tiredness, but the body's way of saying no when we won't. And we covered 5 practical ways to build sustainability into your life as a creative and person who may have a chronic illness. So remember that you can be ambitious without burning out, but it does require unlearning everything we've been taught about what traditional ambition looks like. It is not endless suffering until you reach your goal. It is not sacrificing your health for building your dreams. Real ambition is building something that lasts because you built it in a way that honors your body, your limits, and your humanity. Okay, so thank you so much for being here for episode 2. For those of you navigating chronic illness, invisible disabilities, mental health challenges while you try to build something, I just want you to know that I see you and this is hard and that you are not alone. So tell me in the comments, what's your relationship with ambition? Are you also afraid of it? What are your burnout warning signs? And let's learn from each other. Okay, I am Bethany Morris, and this has been another episode of A Year Without Fear. I'll see you next week.